All right, here we go with 2019. Notice it tells you exactly what type of gap you're in a recessionary gap. And again, you got to draw it. This is a very common way to start many question ones. It would be different for you guys since they're doing it differently, but it's a good place to always think about. So here we are, GDPR. We have price level. We have our long run. Tells us to label that YF. So we're going to go label that YF. Tells us what to label, Y1 and PO1. This is going to be PO1. And then this is going to be Y1. Right there, you're done with A. Let's look at B. B says central government does not take policy action. So remember, does not take policy action. That means it is classical. Whoops. That means classical. And remember, in the classical model, that's where in a recession, remember you have lots of people out of work. So the boss says take a pay cut or get fired. Workers take the pay cut and aggregate supply increases. Goes back to the long run. So your answer would be to B1 would be aggregate supply would increase back to full employment. If it asked for a Y, you would say resource prices decreased. But it didn't ask for a Y or an explain, so you didn't have to. And then 2, on your graph, show what happens. So graphically, we would do this. Label that AS1. Actually, since those are 1s, you can't do that. So nope. We would label this AS2. And we would mark over here as PL2. Okay, questions about that? Can't ask them anyway, unless you want to put them in the chat. You go ahead and put them in the chat. But let's move on. So we would put 2 here. We would say graph. And then let's do C. C says, suppose that is unwilling to wait for the long run. MPC is 0.8, which means we know that if MPC is 0.8, we know MPS. That MPS is going to be 0.2. Remember, 1 over 0.2 gives us a multiplier of 5. So it says real output is 500 billion. The equal and real output 500 billion. The full employment is 540. So that tells us right there, tells us how large our gap is and what we have to close. So it tells us we have a $40 billion gap to close. So remember, the formula is total change equals multiplier times initial change. And all we're going to do is plug in the total change. So we're at 500 and we need to go to 540. So what that's basically saying is this point right here is 500 and this is 540. So we need to get, so our total change is going to be 40 billion. Our multiplier is 5. And then we just do the math. Is 8 billion. Is 8. So it would be 8 billion for I. And then notice 2 tells you to do the required to shift if they did a change in taxes. So remember, the tax multiplier is different. Tax multiplier is MPC over MPS. So let's remember the tax multiplier is MPC over MPS. So that gives us 0.8 over 0.2, which gives us 4. So that means our tax multiplier is 4. So then we just plug in the same thing this time. That's going to be 40 equals, since it's a decrease, we're going to have to decrease taxes. And we're solving for the initial change. So we have 10 billion So you have to say decrease by 10 billion. Okay, because notice it's the tax multiplier. Very good. Let's go on to D. D says, assume instead the Canadian Central Bank takes actions to restore the economy full employment by influencing investment spending, draw a correct label of the money market, and show the effect of actions taken by the central bank. So again, and it's worth 2 points for this question. So you draw on the money market. We got Q money. We got interest rates nominal, money supply, demand for money. We can label this ME and label this IRE. And they're telling you right here that they're going to increase out full employment of the market, show the effect of the actions taken. So they're going to increase the money supply. So you should have money supply increasing. We'll label this M1, and right here we have IR1. So you should have correctly shown that the money supply increases. And then we have E. E tells us now Canada and Mexico are trading partners. Draw the foreign exchange market and show the effect on the interest rate and what's going to happen. So let's do it. Even though you won't be tested on this, we'll see how it works because it's a good connection. We have quantity of Canadian dollars. We have pesos over Canadian dollars for our exchange rate. Demand, supply. And notice, if the interest rates go down, so the interest rates are going down in Canada, people from Mexico do not want to put their money there. So there is now, actually, let me back up, label these here. We'll call this QE and call this ERE. So the demand for the Canadian currency decreases. And there we go. And that's it for question number 1. Let's move on to question number 2. All right, let's start out with number 2. Let's look what it says. It tells us inflation rate in the country is 3%, current unemployment rate is 6%, the NRU is 4%. So that tells you right there you're in a recessionary gap because you have your unemployment rate is higher than your NRU. What does it tell us to do? Draw long run and short run and use those numbers to label it. Let's go. So we're going to start right here. We got unemployment. We got inflation. We have our long run Phillips curve. Short run Phillips curve. And we know that our where we should be is 3%. Our NRU is 4%, but we are higher, so we are at 6%. This is all you had to do for A. Notice we didn't dot over here. We can if you wanted to come over here, but we don't know what this number is, so we can call this X. But X, this will help us with B. So based on B, B says, is the actual inflation rate greater than, less than, or equal to 3%? As we can clearly see here, it is less than. So the answer is less than. It doesn't say explain, so that's really all you need. C, assume the loans were made into account taking the expected inflation rate of 3%. Will lenders be better off or worse off after? And then you do have the explain. So you should have said lenders will be better off. The reason why lenders are better off is because if they're getting paid back at this, but we're really here, basically what you could say is that the lenders are better off. The repayments, the repayments will be higher than expected. Okay, let's look at D. D says, based on the relationship between the actual and expected inflation rates in Part A, what will happen to the NRU? Right off the bat, you should know that's your trick question, and you should put no change to NRU. And just like that, you're done with 2. Let's move on to 3. Let's look at 3 here. 3 says households want to increase their savings for retirement. Draw your loanable funds market and show the effect. So let's go right here, loanable funds market. We have QLF. We have IRR for real. We have the demand for loanable funds. We have the supply of loanable funds. We can come down here. Table is QE, IRE. We know the supply of loanable funds, being the savings, is going to increase because people are going to save more money. So we'll label this S1, Q1, IR1. On the AP test, they may ask you something like this, but they're going to ask you what happens here because they're not going to be able to see your graphs. So that's all you need for A. Let's do B. Based on the interest rate change in Part A, what will happen to Econoland's purchase of foreign assets? So foreign assets is stuff from their banks. You should put increase. It will increase. And notice you have the explain. So why? You're going to say because our interest rates are lower. So people will put their money elsewhere. That's it for B. For C, we're going to look at foreign exchange. What happens to the international value of all that money is going? Remember, if they want to put their money into a different country's bank, they have to exchange it. So the supply of their money increases. So therefore, if anytime the supply of your currency increases on the giant table, you will depreciate. So you put depreciate. And what will their central bank do to increase the value of its currency? They would buy its currency. Oops. Buy their currency from the Forex market. Again, that's not going to be on the test C, but A and B could be, but I want you to see the connection, just so the better the connections you see, the better you're going to do. And that's it. Have a wonderful rest of your day.